When I first started doing executive search, we would go out and we would find candidates, the most impressive candidates to do the most difficult things in the world for the biggest organizations on the planet. Now, when I first started doing search, I worked for a guy who, before doing executive search, ran prisons. He ran high security prisons, like where they send the worst offenders, the murderers. And I remember running into his office one day being like, "Dave, we have an emergency!" Because one of my candidates had dropped out. And he sits me down in the chair and he was like, "Laura, sit down. Does anyone have a gun or knife who shouldn't have a gun or knife?" "No, what are you talking about?" "Is anyone on this side of the wall who should be on that side of the wall?" "No, what are you talking about?" "Anybody bleeding?" "No, what are you talking about?" "Well, then we don't have an emergency. We have a situation." And I was like, "Yes, but," and he was like, "Stop, relax, calm down. Why are you so agitated about it?" And when he asked me that, I was like, "I'm sorry, I was just out late last night with my friends and my dog threw up all over the rug this morning and I came in here and the first thing I found out was my candidate dropped out of the pool." I was oversharing. He didn't need to know all of those things. I could learn a lesson about perspective in the workforce without him thinking, is she gonna be out late at night? Is her dog throwing up on the rug? Does she have other things that are going on? Or is she 100% focused on the thing I care about, which is presenting a candidate pool to our client? And because of that, the next time the really big search came along, guess who didn't get assigned to that project? Me. And that affected my work, it affected my promotability, and affected how much everybody in that office could count on me. So I'm here today to talk to you about how not to overshare at work, because it's hurting you and it's hurting your career. I'm Laura Gassner-Otting, and I spent 20 years in executive search, stewarding hundreds of organizations and thousands of leaders from Gen Z all the way to boomers through their careers. If you're looking to level up your career, please subscribe to this channel. Okay, let's get into it. Oversharing is any time you come into the office and you talk about things either that are super messy from your private life, so maybe going out and partying too much, drinking too much, having too late of a night the night before a big meeting. So anything that would seem like, can I count on this person? That would be oversharing from your personal life. If you're talking about a fight that you had with one of your partners, a boyfriend or girlfriend, something like that is also oversharing, because people are starting to wonder like, oh, are they gonna talk this way about me when I'm not around? Another example of oversharing might be in the professional environment if you're gossiping about other people who are in the office. Maybe you're talking about how hard something was or how you cut some corners here and there and got away with it, but you're doing it in a way that's, more emotional and feels a little less trustworthy. So anytime that you're in a setting where you're just giving a little bit too much that's like outside of what's necessary to move a project forward could be seen as oversharing. Now, the most important thing to remember about oversharing is that everybody's definition of it is different. So some people might think oversharing is just when you talk about going out to dinner with friends the night before. They don't want to know, they don't care, they just want to like, what's happening in the business. Other people might only think oversharing is like if you're talking about doing something that was like, oh, we had 16 shots last night at happy hour. So it's very important for you to gauge the people who you work with and understand the culture of the organization where you work to figure out what is sharing, human, and what is oversharing, messy. You should not overshare because, frankly, it can make you unpromotable. If your manager's looking around and they're trying to figure out who to give the stretch assignment to, and all you present with is struggle, then they're not going to trust that you're going to be able to show up when things get hard, when you do the things that you haven't done before, because all you've shown them in the past is that things are difficult, things are hard, things are messy. So if you're showing up as somebody who is oversharing about emotion all the time, it's going to harm your reputation and you will not be in line for the promotion. So the second risk of oversharing is that you're going to alienate some of your colleagues who do not want to be associated with the TMI crowd. So a lot of the times that we are successful at work is because other people bring us into a project. They see us and they ask us to come along to a meeting, something that puts us in the sights of the person who might promote us. And if people don't want to be associated with you, if you walk into the break room and they leave, that might be a good sign that you're oversharing. If you're oversharing, you're not being human, you're just emotionally hijacking. You're giving somebody else a burden of your stuff to carry along with them, whether it's emotion, whether it's mess, whether it's gossip. You're giving them something that then they have to deal with. And if you're putting an additional burden on somebody else, if you're emotionally hijacking the environment, then they're going to avoid you. And if you start getting alienated by your colleagues, you're not going to get invited into the moments that are going to help increase your career trajectory. So oversharing can also impact internal processes. So when you're doing 360 reviews, when you're up for promotions, even when you're arguing for paid time off, it can become an issue. So let's think about performance reviews. It's not just your boss who's telling you whether you did a good enough job and thinking about your promotion. You're also getting performance reviews from your colleagues, from your peers. Now, if it's time for you to get a promotion and the boss asks the peer, how are you doing? If what you get is they're doing great, which is amazing because, it's been hard for them, or they're doing great despite some of the struggles they've had, that puts a little seed in your boss's mind that thinks, oh, they're good, but maybe not reliable. Maybe they're not the one who they're like 80%. I'm gonna go with the 100% person. Also, if you're showing your peer pictures of you on vacation and you're wearing a very skimpy swimsuit, or you're, shotgunning, a beer or something, there's gonna be this question of, can I take them to the event? Can I take them to the client dinner? Are they gonna overdrink? Are they gonna get overserved? Are they going to over gossip at the client dinner? So it starts to impact your performance reviews and your promotability internally in an organization, even if you're not oversharing with your boss, because your peers are still being asked about how you are when you're not in the room. You may be feeling super annoyed that your people are oversharing, but rather than being annoyed about it, stop for a moment and ask yourself, is this an issue with this one person who's oversharing, or is this indicative of a problem in our culture? People overshare because they don't feel seen. They overshare because they don't feel heard. They overshare because they don't feel recognized. So if somebody on your team is oversharing, if they're asking you to see their struggle, if they're begging you to see their pain, it may be because they don't feel seen by you. There's a million miles between being seen and being loved, right? People think you love them because they're doing their job, you're paying them, they get promoted, fine. But do you actually see them? Do you care about them? Do you understand what makes them tick? What inspires them? What excites them? We know from our research, we have 10,000 results from 113 different countries, every possible demographic, every possible industry, that says that almost every single person wants to feel inspired and excited about their work. But less than a third of us actually feel seen by our leaders. Here's why that's a problem. We know that bad leaders bleed out good people. That's obvious. So we focused our research specifically on people who said, I work for a quote unquote good leader, somebody who's gets the results, who's done the work, who's had the training. And what we found is that people who say, I work for a good leader, but I have no relationship with that leader, are just as likely to leave as somebody who says, I work for a bad leader. So if people in your environment are oversharing, it might be a them problem, but it also might be a you problem. So the first thing you should do as a manager, if your team tends to be oversharing, is to ask yourself, is this a problem with our culture? Is this a signal that I really need to listen to? The second thing you need to do if people are oversharing is not ignore it. You also shouldn't indulge it, but if you're ignoring the oversharing because you're like, it's fine, I'm just gonna ignore it, it'll go away, you're actually not protecting your people, you're harming your people. Because what happens is that overshare doesn't get stopped, and then more people do it, and more people do it, and more people do it, and it becomes toxic to your culture. So we have to nip it in the bud. Now, I wouldn't do it publicly because who wants to get called out in public? But pull the person into a private setting and say, listen, let's talk a little bit about that oversharing. I'm a bit concerned that it may be affecting how your peers are thinking about you, how your peers may be, what esteem that they hold you in, what kinds of projects they're gonna bring you on, how reliable you seem as a colleague in the workforce. So always tie it back to performance. So as a leader, you yourself may have empathy, but it's really important that you also train your managers to listen with empathy as well, to ask questions, to be curious, to understand what's the root problem beneath the struggle that their team member is having. And there's a very simple way to do this, which is to say, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. I'm going to repeat back to you what I think I'm understanding, and then let's together brainstorm a solution where you can get the support you need, but also show up to perform at the level that we need. Every time we have this conversation with an employee about oversharing, we have to root it back every single time to performance, so it's not just about emotion. First, because you're not a therapist. You're not trained to help manage their emotional needs. You may not understand the complexity of what's going on, and it's your responsibility not to ignore it and not to gloss over it and not to diminish it, but to actually help them get to the help that they need. And if you can tie it back to performance, then if it's starting to affect the performance of that employee, of your division, then you can figure out whether or not it's a them problem or a culture problem. When my kids were little and they would get in fights at school, they would come home and they'd be like, yeah, but he said something mean to me, so I said something mean back. And I said, well, but just think before you spoke. Was it true? Was it helpful? Was it intentional? Was it necessary? And was it kind? Did you think before you spoke? Is it true? Did you say something that was actually real, right? Is it helpful? Did it actually move the conversation forward? Was it intentional? Did it come from a place of emotion, or did it come from a place that you actually were thinking through what you were saying before you said it and you understood the ramifications that statement would have? Is it necessary? Are you just saying it because you want to drag somebody else through your emotions, or are you actually giving somebody some information that's going to help them understand how you're feeling? And then is it kind? Are you just being mean? Are you just poking? Are you just trying to get an emotional reaction out of somebody? Or are you thinking about your impact on them and their feelings? So that's what we would do with our kids when they were little. And it's a really good test that you can use in the office place. Are you think sharing or are you feel sharing? And if you're feel sharing, it's false, it's emotional, it's excessive, and it's loaded. And by that I mean it's false. It's coming out of a place where you haven't fact checked it. You don't know that this is something that you actually know to be true. Is it emotional? Is it just coming out of a place of heat, of just need in that moment? Is it excessive? Is it over the top? Does the situation call for a 3 and you're coming in at a 10? And is it loaded? Is the entire point of it to load somebody else with this emotion and this feeling that you have so you can get it off of your chest? And if you're feel sharing versus think sharing, then it's not going to be something that's going to suit you well in the workplace, because people are going to assume that every time you come in, you're coming from this place of heat, of emotion, of vulnerability, of struggle, as opposed to think sharing where you've thought through it. They know that you're reliable, they know that they can count on you, and they know that everything that you're bringing to the table is something that is going to move you and them, the entire project, and the entire company forward. So you might be thinking, my God, I can't talk about anything now. How do I be myself at work? I'm not telling you that you can't share. What I'm telling you is that I want you to speak from your strengths, not from your wounds. Talk about your work. Don't always talk about your struggle. So here's what happens. In the absence of stories, your manager is going to create monsters. If you're not in the office on a Friday and you just overshared last week that you had something going on in your personal life, whether it was a sick family member or you were sick yourself, they're going to start thinking, oh, they're always sick. They don't come into work. They're not reliable. So instead of waiting for them to define for you what your story is, get ahead of it and tell your story first. Instead of saying, here's my struggle, please deal with it. Say, here's my struggle and here's how I'm thinking about working on it. What would you suggest? How would you advise? So use that opportunity, not just as one to talk about where you're having a hard time, but also how you're working to try to get around it and to learn what else they know that they can help you use so that you can get there. Because here's the thing. The person to whom you're reporting has also had struggle in their lives, whether they've had a sick family member, whether they've had a sick kid, whether they themselves drank too much at a family happy hour or a party at some point, they've also had an issue. They've learned how to figure it out. So rather than letting them think of you at your worst moment, you can also ask them how they got over their worst moment so that you can both find your best moment. If you like this video and you found it helpful, don't forget to like it, to share it, and to subscribe to my channel. And by the way, tell me in the comments, what are your challenges when it comes to hiring? What are your challenges when it comes to finding top-tier talent? And what are your challenges when it comes to your own career? I'd love to know so we can solve it in a future video.